Before we start, I just want to thank the people that helped make tonight possible, Megan Moralia and Annika Sari. I could not have done this without you, so thank you so, so much. And everybody else working behind the scenes. It's a pretty good view, too. Thank you all for coming out tonight for this wonderful occasion. My name is Annette Frost. I'm the director of the Favorite Poem Project here at BU. I've had the pleasure and the good luck of studying with and working with Robert for the past 10 years. For all of us at BU, this is a bittersweet moment. I think it's fair to say, as we look around this room, that every single person sitting here, almost every single person sitting here, has had their life impacted by Robert in some meaningful way. So sad as it may be that Robert is leaving BU, we are really here to pass along our gratitude and our congratulations to his long and meaningful tenure here. And as a former student of Robert says, whether you're inside the classroom or outside Robert, you're always teaching us something valuable. I hope you all got a chance to see the videos that we've been playing, and those videos are the heart of the Favorite Poem Project, which Robert began when he was Poet Laureate more than 25 years ago. It is fitting that the FPP is one of the most modest, simple, and enduring public arts projects the country has ever seen. We'll show a few more videos after the reading, and please continue to follow along with the project at favoritepoem.org. Please note there are also books for sale, and Robert is willing and happy to sign some of them after the reading during the reception. It feels fitting for me personally that the person who will be introducing Robert tonight is another incredibly impactful person, not just for me, but for the whole BU creative writing community and beyond. When I was a graduate student 10 years ago at BU, I had the great fortune of studying under both Robert Pinsky and Carl Kirchwey. Carl was the director of creative writing at my time as a student, and working with both him and Robert together was life-changing. Carl is one of the most vibrant and earnest professors I have ever had, and my poetry owes him a debt of gratitude. And now for the official business. Carl Kirchwey is a professor of English and creative writing here at BU. In addition to poetry, his recent teachings have included courses in the classics, English and world languages, and literature departments, including co-teaching the esteemed BU Translation Seminar. Carl has 3 books forthcoming. Good Apothecary from Northwestern University Press later this year will be his 8th book of poetry. More Honor in Betrayal from Opuntia Agincourt Press in 2026 is the first selected poems in English by the mid-century Italian poet Giovanni Giudici. And if that weren't enough, his memoir, Who Rides the Flame, a family history of wartime loss, is forthcoming in 2027 from Unbound Edition Press. Please join me in welcoming Carl Kirchwey.
Where does the musical quality of Robert Pinsky's poetry come from? Instantly, one is tempted to mythologize in answering this question. Robert, after all, is a mythologizer, and both in poetry and in prose, he has explored his childhood and young adulthood in Long Branch on the New Jersey shore. Robert's poem, At Pleasure Bay, included in his 1990 volume, The Want Bone, begins like this. In the willows, along the river at Pleasure Bay, a catbird singing, never the same phrase twice. Here, under the pines, a little off the road, in 1927, the chief of police and Mrs. W. killed themselves together, sitting in a roadster. The material is worthy of a blues or a ballad. The lovers are archetypes, and that catbird is nothing if not a stand-in for the poet himself. So let me offer a possibly mythical answer to the question with which I began. Where does the music of Robert's poetry come from? He was a tenor sax player in his younger years, an undiligent player by his own admission, and was lucky enough to acquire from a passing soldier a Boucher aristocrat. His sister was married to a gangster, however. One day, Robert arrived home to find that his beautiful Boucher aristocrat had been hawked. At least, that's the story. From here, it would be easy to say, well, deprived of his axe, Robert turned to singing a different song, and never the same phrase twice. I believe this is the third or fourth time I have had the honor of introducing Robert at a public event, but I do not mean to sing the same phrase twice. At Bryn Mawr College in 2003, I remarked as follows: if Walt Whitman is the bard of Camden and Bruce Springsteen is the bard of Asbury Park, then Pinsky is the bard of Long Branch. Pinsky studied with Ivor Winters at Stanford, but did not become an academic poet. How is this possible? His poetry is so brainy, so full of ideas, and yet it is not academic. He begins with the facts of his own Jewish immigrant forebears, then weaves in Christianity and the Vedas and American popular culture. The voice of Pinsky's poetry is both deeply learned and edgily unlearned. He cultivates the persona of the chuchim, the wise guy, the kidder, the shapeshifter, Loki the schemer, Hermes the divine messenger. I continue in that introduction to praise the way Robert listens, really listens to the stories of those around him in this country of ours, a country so large and strangely broken and unforeseen, as he calls it in his poem, An Explanation of America. Robert has created a poetic voice that is distinctively American in its range and its resourcefulness. And I say distinctively American because no matter how much the political spirit of this moment may try to deny it in its nostalgia for a non-existent past, the United States has always been restless and polyglot and mixed in just the way Robert's poetry has been. A quarter century ago, in his book, Jersey Rain, Robert wrote a poem that echoes Dante, and it begins like this: now, near the end of the middle stretch of road, what have I learned? Some earthly wiles and art that often I cannot tell good fortune from bad, that once had seemed so easy to tell apart. Robert is further down that road by now, but we are grateful for his earthly wiles and for his art. Please join me in welcoming him.
This is what I look like when I'm trying not to be overwhelmed. That is such a beautiful introduction by my colleague, Carl, and he read from those poems so very well. It is an honor to have been the colleague, most recently, of Carl and Ha-Jin in the poetry faculty of our MFA program. And when I came here, my colleague, the other poetry teacher, was Derek Walcott. And over the years, people who were here, including Gail Mazer, Maggie Dietz, also Nicole Seeley, David Ferry. It has been a very impressive set of colleagues. I'm grateful to them. I'm very proud of the favorite poem videos, very appropriate that an immigrant story was in the last one we saw. Pov Chin, I'm happy to say that young woman is now an attorney, and I trust her to preserve the law. And along with the list of colleagues, and Maggie, of course, also helped with those videos, it's also important to acknowledge that Maggie helped with the Favorite Poem Project. She was the first director, and I need to pay tribute to the executive producer, Juanita Anderson. And I glory in these videos, and I know that the credit is to Juanita Anderson and to Maggie Dietz for getting that project going. I'm very happy that Annette Frost, thanks to the BU Center for the Humanities, directed by Juliet Floyd, the Favorite Poem Project will keep going, and that beautiful website with these videos and many other things will keep going. And now I will try to give a poetry reading. I have made an oath of a kind that in the coming years, every time I give a poetry reading, I'm going to begin with this poem. In a sense, it's by me. It's my English version based on a trot from the Polish provided to me by another colleague, my colleague at the University of California, Berkeley, my friend and colleague there, Czesław Miłosz. So this is Czesław's poem in my English version, Incantation. Human reason is beautiful and invincible. No bars, no barbed wire, no sentence of banishment, no pulping of books can prevail against it. It establishes the universal ideas in language and guides our hand so we write truth and justice with capital letters, lie and oppression with small. It puts what should be above things as they are. It is an enemy of despair and a friend of hope. It does not know Jew from Greek or slave from master, giving us the estate of the world to manage. It saves austere and transparent phrases from the filthy discord of tortured words. It says that everything is new under the sun, opens the congealed fist of the past. Beautiful and very young are Philosophia and poetry, her ally in the service of the good. As late as yesterday, nature celebrated their birth. The news was brought to the mountains by a unicorn and an echo. Their friendship will be glorious. Their time has no limit. Their enemies have delivered themselves to destruction. I have been working on new poems, and I'll begin with some of those. This is one that I haven't seen it there yet. It's in the current issue of The Atlantic. Old news. I'm more at home in the past. I'm more at home in the past, though I do try to live in that lonesome place, the present moment. I share a stack of magazines with somebody who reads the new ones from the top. The bottom, salted with gilded ephemera, outspent ads, and failing or faded fads, that's my mate. Praying that I'm not blinding myself to horror, I studied the Times online to behold the face of fascism and its disregarding hand. I keep on thinking about it and its falsifying hand as I retreat to a home screen of my high school class, our posted shades of mortal and veils and marrows. The conversation floats down tunnels of fortune to the 9th grade. Joe Cittadino expelled for setting a fire in the Chattel Building attic. Joe died a while ago. Did people know that? Instead of hiding as usual in silent anonymity, I give myself the homely civic pleasure of having something to say. So I post. Joe told me back then it wasn't him. He took the blame to impress a girl. Her brother was Mickey Quinn, who really set the fire. And thank you, Junior Giordano, for writing. You were right, Robert. It was Frankie Quinn. Gave me so much pleasure, and I admit it was partly Robert. I enjoyed that a lot. I'll read another. Here's a somewhat longer poem from this, I hope, a new book. My students know I'm against giving explanations in poetry, and I don't like in poetry readings when you get a lot of footnotes. I can't resist now, though. I end by referring to Bruno Schulz, a great and martyred visual artist and poet and fiction writer who was killed. It was actually the Nazi who was his patron, that he did pictures and stuff for, was the enemy of the Nazi who killed him despite the other guy. That was the end of Bruno Schulz. That has nothing to do with the poem. It's just sort of an interesting story. The poem is called The Angel of Retail. The Angel of Retail. O Spirit of Grace, in the taffy machine's chrome arms, those chrome arms at Morris's Candy, performing a saraband, unknitting and knitting again the immaculate sweets. O Spirit of Order, in a plank held across uprights between the customers and the visible bottles, a bar, the barrier presence attending to our pleasures. Angel of displays, recurrent and mortal and porous, dry goods and hardware, and the eyeless heads that I recall as fearsome in the window of DeLugo's ladies' hats. New spirits of the body, pilates and threading, that I needed explained to me in my ignorance, not like that of those who hissed at thy unequaled play, The Alchemist. Oh, fie upon him, says Robert Herrick, son of a goldsmith, praising Ben Jonson. Like Twain's Dauphin and Duke, Johnson's subtle The Alchemist cheats us townsfolk. He sells Abel Drugger a magnet to attract customers. No joke, ruthless angel. In Greenwood, Oklahoma, the murderous white rioters destroyed Eldridge's restaurant and Lewis's Meats and Sundries, more shocking than the bank, the church, more shocking even than burning down the movie theater named the Dixie. Lethal deviser, angel of retail, you removed the X-ray from Hirsch's footwear, you vendor of wonders, but only after I watched my live toes wiggle in monochrome space. Bill Russell bought Slade's Barbecue in your urban gaze where Walter Benjamin would buy his shirts. The Nazis knew from you which windows to paint. In an upstairs Chinese restaurant, we immigrants looked white with mugu pan. And across the hall lived the DiNucci's. And at their Liberty Market, my grandfather bought the apple that to win a bet, he threw high over the A&P water tower. Your great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company, Angel, now defunct. Or is that story of small-town prowess a legend dreamt up by your offspring, Bruno Schultz, at home in his apartment above the family store? I'll find out eventually how much people understand what things like living above the family store and retail and downtowns, what they mean and how they mean to me. I already said there's one thing I couldn't resist giving information. I can't help but tell you that a few hours ago, I got an email from my sister telling me that our maternal grandfather, Morris Eisenberg, she sent me the document. He came to this country through Galveston in 1908. I knew he was an immigrant, of course. The document she sent me with a picture of him looking great, it was a declaration of intent to take his citizenship January 1939. He came to the country in 1908. He was in the country for 31 years. My grandpa, my Zadie, he lived 4 doors away from me. He couldn't have seemed more American to me. And it's just shortly before I was born and shortly before his son went into the American Army that he declared his intent. I think there's a document somewhere. He did fulfill that intent. And it was like a little message to me before I give a poetry reading in which I'm thinking very much about the word immigrant and the reality immigrant and its changing meanings. I'm not a religious person, but I emailed back to my sister, said, I've put it differently. And she said she has no idea. Maybe they felt with war coming or what was happening in Europe, it was well past time to do that. Some of you know that I've had recent poems. These poems are about people who I thought of when I was a child and a teenager as old men. They were at that time 20 or 30 years or 40 years younger than I am now. And I find myself just needing to write poems called Leo Gorcey and Izzy Kassoff. And this is another one of that series, and I realized that they all were immigrants, or sometimes the children of immigrants. This is a poem, a new poem called Italo Talarico. Italo Talarico. Sometimes I feel like ancient stereotypes govern me. Sometimes I feel like ancient stereotypes govern me and everything I remember. My uncle Italo said, because his wife Thelma and all her family looked like movie stars, they let it make them soft, not Jewish enough. What did Italo think he knew about it? Fresh out of law school, he applied to the FBI. Of course, they wouldn't hire an Italian, Italo said. Thelma was his secretary, taller than him. One of my school teachers, smiling to make it sound bad, called Italo, quote, a Flemington lawyer, end quote. Meaning what? Why bring it up? Some long-forgotten slur from State House politics in Trenton involving the trucks of his uncle or cousin with Talarico in fancy capital letters down their length. An intricate ignorance gave me nearly personal pleasure in those big trucks. Thelma knows law better than I do, he said. Now, studying pictures of them at weddings or on a cruise or dancing at my bar mitzvah, I think a true cliche. The love of Italo's life was my Aunt Thelma. Here's a poem from my recent book, Proverbs of Limbo. Branca. Ralph Branca was the 15th of 17 children. This poem is not the poem of the speaker. His father was an immigrant from Calabria. These words are those of Robert Pinsky, speaking. Branca wore Dodger uniform number 13. Speaking is the punchline of a Jewish joke. Some Romans call Calabrians Africani. Brooklyn had its own daily, the Brooklyn Eagle. At 85, Branca learned about his mother. He was 21 when Robinson joined the Dodgers. At 11, I loved Robinson for his daring, running the bases, stealing home, his fire. Branca was one of the few who befriended him. I was too young to understand his mission, the fuel of that dancing to taunt the pitcher. Robinson never forgot Branca's kindness. What the old man found out about his mother is she was born a Jew in Hungary, Kati. After he gave up the most famous home run ever, back in the clubhouse, Branca lay weeping, face down. Kati gave birth to 17 Catholic children. The Giants won the pennant, 1951. Branca means claw, a fit name for a pitcher. His teammates thought it best that he cry alone. But, quote, only my dear friend, Jackie, who knew me so well, came over and put his arm around my shoulder. The Nazis killed the aunts and uncles Branca didn't know existed until he was old. 42, in itself a nothing of a number. The Dodgers traded Branca to the Tigers. Grief, with its countless different ways and strains. Glory, a thing greater than success, but slower. Some of the Tigers who had been giants explained to Branca how the giants had stolen the signs from opposition catchers. The telescope in center field, wires, buzzers. Branca chose not to talk about it. It's all in Prager's book. His research unearthed Kati, those aunts and uncles. The Dodgers were taken from Brooklyn by their owner. I, Robert Pinsky, choose not to say his name. I didn't live in Brooklyn, but I knew the score. I knew it was a kind of underdog place. Nowadays, once a year, all major leaguers wear Jackie Robinson's number, 42. Big deal. In the joke, the person who answers the telephone at Goldberg, Goldberg, and Goldberg keeps replying that Goldberg is out of the office. And so is Goldberg. All right then, let me talk to Goldberg. Speaking. Robinson spoke to Branca. Without you, he said, we never could have made it this far. I think it's time now. I would like to read to you from this book, An Explanation of America. It was my second book of poems. It's mainly a book-length poem. I'm happy to say it's been in print ever since it was published in, I think, 1976. And even better, to my surprise, Princeton University Press, next April, Poetry Month, they're going to publish this book and my first book, Sadness and Happiness, in one binding that I'm putting together. And as a retired person, I now have to write a preface for that book, so I'll have some extra time. The book is in 3 parts. Carl, in that very kind introduction, alluded to them. The 3 parts are its many fragments, 4 sections, its great emptiness, 4 sections, and its everlasting possibility. 3 truisms about the country, that it is in many different fragments, geographically, ethnically, religiously, politically, all sorts of ways. I discovered, and the middle one, its great emptiness. I always advise foreigners that want to get to know this country to drive across it. See how much, much more land is unoccupied than is occupied. It's true in California. You go north of the Bay Area, you go so many miles, seeing nothing. And that has to have meaning. And third, its everlasting possibility, which is in a way a good thing, in a way a grievous or lamentable or at least worrisome thing. I am rereading Miłosz's book, The Captive Mind, and in the second chapter is called The View to the West. He talks about how the Europeans of his day, especially in what were called the people's democracies, the Soviet countries, he begins the chapter by saying, a Polish person saying to him, are Americans really that stupid? Are they stupid? And he says that's a mixture of dread and hope. They don't understand it. And they're hoping that they think about this country and the West with confusion. The absence of an intelligentsia in the European sense is bewildering. And in a memorable paragraph, I can't find my piece of paper that I had with me where I had a Xerox of that. Doesn't matter. He says that Americans tend to think of our democracy as a raft full of people who are paddling in different directions. And the raft is there with us paddling. We think of ourselves that way. And it often seems that the totalitarian trireme, it says something like, with its oars poised up, the totalitarian trireme is so much more effective and goes by it and is more powerful. He says, and yet, there are rocks where the totalitarian trireme crashes and destroys itself, and the raft manages to keep going. I don't want to make that overly optimistic. I relate it to in that poem that I read to you that ends, Philosophia, which means science, and poetry, her ally in the service of the good. They're recent, they're very young, yet beautiful. I'll read from a section in An Explanation of America called Bad Dreams. The poem is addressed to an 8-year-old child who, in the course of the poem, in the 2 years I'm writing the poem, plus, she turns from an 8-year-old to an 11-year-old. And the thesis is, I acknowledge you're not really writing to the child, but to an imagination of the child. The thesis is, one way or another, if you're a parent, you present the child with where you live, and therefore with the culture and a polity and so forth. Bad dreams. Immigration comes, again, I'm explaining kids, sorry. This passage does involve immigration, as does everything I have to say to you. I suppose I'm dedicating this to Morris Eisenberg, who turned out to be, I don't know what documents he had, but he was an immigrant, unthinkably to me, between 1908, when he landed in Texas, and 1939, when he decided he intended to begin, and blah, blah. Bad dreams. In a way, every stranger must imagine the place where he finds himself. As shrewd Odysseus was able to imagine as he wandered the ways and perils of a foreign place, making his goal not knowing the real place, but his survival and his progress home. And everyone has felt it, foreign ground, with its demand on the imagination like the strange gaze of the cattle of the sun. Unless one is an angel or a hick, a tribesman who never made his wander year, a provincial. People who must, like immigrants or nomads, live always in imaginary places, think of some past or word to fill a blank. The encampment at the pole or at the summit, Comanches in Los Angeles, the Jews of Russia or Romania who lived in Israel before it was a place or thought, but a pure memorized word which they knew better than their own hands. There are perils in living always in vision, always inventing entire whatever paves or animates the innocent sand or snow of a mere locale. What if the place itself should seem a blank, as in a country huge, open, and potential, swelling in concentric gusts of quiet, absorbing the imagination in a cloud of quiet, a vague chimera? That quiet leads me to a stranger's dread of the place frightened settlers might invent. The customs of the people there, the tongues they speak, what they have to drink, the things that they imagine might falter in such a place or be too few, and men would live like Cyclops, quote, with neither assemblies nor any settled customs, or Lastrygonians who consume their kind. I'm skipping a bit where I imagine an unwitting fascist, a proto-fascist, a settler who's afraid of where he is and he's vaguely guilty about the people who were already there that he displaced. Such a man, neither a Greek heroic adventurer with his pragmatic gods, nor an Indian, nor a Jew. Such a man would worship not an earth or past or word, but something immanent, like a shadow. Perhaps he was once a Protestant, with a God whose hand was in every berry, every insect cloud, not in the Indian way, but as one hand, immanent, above that berry and its name. And when that hand came to him as a prairie, he beheld pure space, as if it were a god or a devil. And if he lost that hand, why wouldn't he, in his loneliness and his love of thinking nothing, grow eager to lose himself among a brazen crowd, as in a calf, a certain landscape, or a bird? Or say he sets out upon that not empty plain, immanent, with a quiet beyond all thought, all words, and he settles on that ground of trial to invent a mystic home, and then discovers people there already, engaged upon their commerce or their gossip, at home or wandering as in an actual place, attending to their ordinary business, the ordinary passion to bring death for gain or glory. As Odysseus might feel, that passion would be augmented and inflamed by the harsher passion of a settler. And so, why wouldn't he bring his death to Indians or Jews or Greeks who stop for food and water, immigrants to bustle and jabber on his tangled plain? I'll read a passage further on. It's almost the kind of there's a section that's about the Vietnam War. It's a passage that I did this performance with Bruce Springsteen. And it's a passage that Bruce read, where I'll read that, then I'll read. On television, I used to see each week Americans descending in machines, helicopters, with wasted bravery and blood to spread pain and vast fires in a foreign place among the strangers to whom we were new. Americans, a spook or golem there. I think it made our country older forever. I don't mean better or not better, but merely as though a person should come to a certain place and have his hair turn gray that very night. And I guess I'm arguing by authority that it has meaning. Is that idea that the country made itself older forever, certainly for his generation and mine, that seemed sort of self-evident. The passage I'll read to you is Strangers. This is a kind of, I guess I have to say, a parody of misogyny, of misanthropy, probably misogyny too, a parody of misanthropy, various things. Mistakes, Miss America, I don't know. Strangers, the foreign, who coupling with their cousins or with their livestock, or even with wild beasts, spawn children with tails or claws and spotted fur, ugly. And though their daughters are beautiful, seen dancing from the front, behind their backs or underneath their garments are the tails of reptiles or teeth of bears. So one might feel, thinking about the people who cross the mountains and oceans of the earth with separate legends to die inside the squalor of sod huts, shanties, or tenements, and leave behind their legends or the legend of themselves, broken and mended by the generations, alien, orphaned, disconsolate spooks, earth trolls or calicacs or snopes or golems, descended of Hessians, runaway slaves and Indians, legends confused and loose on the roads at night, the alien or creature of the movies. I've spoken to my students about personal time and historical time. And that has been my way of dealing with the fact that I really don't think poets are that good at, we're not endowed with great political wisdom. We're not good at propaganda. I could go on. We don't get emotion immediately the way music can. We can't make images as vivid as video. But we're on a human scale. And as in the videos you saw, the medium is one person's art, the dignity of the individual. So I can't give you wisdom about immigration. I'm not a historian or a sociologist. The best I can do, I'll go back to Cheslov's image of the raft and everybody paddling a different way. The best I can try to do is show you how I have perceived the overlap and interchange of personal time and historical time, and the effort to distinguish between them and to understand the relationship. Nothing can do that better than the art of Emily Dickinson or Walt Whitman. That is the art that is best equipped to deal with the individual person's time and the time of the historical circumstances of that person. You can take the boy out of the professorship, but you can't take the professorship out of the boy. I always think I'm funnier than people think I am. In that passage, when I say about strangers, I say coupling with their cousins or with their livestock or even with wild beasts, that always seems funny to me. Bad enough they're coupling with their livestock. Even with wild animals, that's going too far. Every time I read it, I think it's a great joke. I've never seen anyone else laugh at it. Maybe I'll close with, I'll give myself another 5 or 7 minutes. And if there are poems by me that people know, I'll read 3 poems that people may know. This is the poem I chose to put first in my collected poems. Rhyme. Air and instrument of the tongue an instrument of the body an instrument of spirit, the spirit a being of the air. Each bird the medium of its song, each song a world, a containment, like a hotel room ready for us guests who inherit our compartment of time there. In the Joseph Cornell box among ephemera as its element, the preserved bird, art, a study in spontaneous elegy, a parrot, art, mortal in its cornered sphere. Each room a stanza, rung in a laddered filament, clambered by all us unsteady, chambered voices that share it, each one reciting, I, too, was here. I, too, was here, in a room, a rhyme, a song, in the box, in books. Each element and instrument, the body still straining to parrot the spirit, a being of air. Shirt. The back, the yoke, the yardage, lapped seams, the nearly invisible stitches along the collar turned in a sweatshop by Koreans or Malaysians, gossiping over tea and noodles on their break, or talking money or politics, while one fitted this arm piece with its overseam to the band of cuff eye button at my wrist. The presser, the cutter, the ringer, the mangle, the needle, the union, the treadle, the bobbin. The infamous blaze at the Triangle Factory in 1911, 146 died in the flames on the 9th floor. No hydrants, no fire escapes. The witness in a building across the street who watched how a young man helped a girl to step up to the windowsill, then held her out away from the masonry wall and let her drop, and then another, as if he were helping them up to enter a streetcar and not eternity. A third, before he dropped her, put her arms around his neck and kissed him. Then he held her into space and dropped her. Almost at once, he stepped to the sill himself. His jacket flared and fluttered up from his shirt as he came down, air filling up the legs of his gray trousers. Like Hart Crane's Bedlamite, shrill shirt ballooning. Wonderful how the pattern matches perfectly across the placket and across the bar-tacked corners of both pockets, like a strict rhyme or a major chord. Prints, plaids, checks, houndstooth, tattersall, madras, the clan tartans invented by mill owners, inspired by the hoax of Ashen to control their savage Scottish workers, tamed by a fabricated heraldry. McGregor, Bailey, McMartin, the kilt devised for workers to wear among the dusty, clattering looms. Weavers, carders, spinners, the loader, the docker, the navvy, the planter, the picker, the sorter sweating at her machine in a litter of cotton as slaves in calico head rags sweated in fields. George Herbert, your descendant is a black lady in South Carolina. Her name is Irma, and she inspected my shirt. Its color and fit and feel and its clean smell have satisfied both her and me. We have culled its cost and quality down to the buttons of simulated bone, the buttonholes, the sizing, the facing, the characters printed in black on neckband and tail, the shape, the label, the labor, the color, the shade, the shirt. I will read two more poems to you. Immigrants again in that poem. Looking again at Explanation of America, partly with the idea of the reissue in mind, partly with this occasion, I marvel at how little I've changed. I hope I've evolved, but that poem, The Angel of Retail, it's the same preoccupations as Explanation of America. It's almost exactly the same kinds of perhaps paranoid fear of the culture, and love of the it hasn't changed at all. It probably was there by the time I was 3 or 4 years old. And I'm stuck with it. I will read 2 more poems to you, and I know that I'm among many friends, and I'll confess, I got, figuratively speaking, hundreds of emails from friends saying, "Oh, I wish I could be there." It was the most characteristic kind of email I've gotten the last 24 hours was, "I won't be there, but I love you," and blah, blah. 2 more poems. Samurai Song. When I had no roof, I made audacity my roof. When I had no supper, my eyes dined. When I had no eyes, I listened. When I had no ears, I thought. When I had no thought, I waited. When I had no father, I made care my father. When I had no mother, I embraced order. When I had no friend, I made quiet my friend. When I had no enemy, I opposed my body. When I had no temple, I made my voice my temple. I have no priest. My tongue is my choir. When I have no means, fortune is my means. When I have nothing, death will be my fortune. Need is my tactic. Detachment is my strategy. When I had no lover, I courted my sleep. The piece of paper I couldn't find was right there at shirt. It was just not my style to have a piece of paper. I will close with the last poem in my most recent book. It is called At the Sangoma, and it's based partly on a visit to an actual Sangoma that I made, and it's based partly on that encounter with the Sangoma. And the man who was my guide gave me what has become one of my main beliefs, a kind of a credo, and so I'm closing with this for you. He said, "I'm proud of our Zulu culture, and it's important for you to understand that we are seeing a real Sangoma. There are fakes. And you should understand that in our Zulu culture, we do not worship our ancestors. It is not ancestor worship. We do not worship our ancestors. We consult them." I did feel that I had had my own deep beliefs articulated and expressed very well. We consult them, and you're betraying them if you just imitate them or if you worship them. And if you fail to consult them, that too is a betrayal. And there's no more sacred obligation because you owe it to the children and the grandchildren to consult the ancestor. If you don't do that, you're failing at your more important than your poetry or your business or anything else you do. If you don't consult the ancestors, you're betraying before you and you're betraying after you. Like I say, it's hard to stop professoring. Thank you, dear friends, for being here. I will close by reading this poem, At the Sangoma. I asked the ancestors about my suffering. You cannot understand it. You were born to too much of the possible. If I was born free, then what are you to me? You were not born free. To be born free, they said, would be not to be born. I asked the ancestors about their suffering. Because it was ours, now it is yours, as the shape of your head is yours. So I asked the ancestors about the children. Is it their suffering too? That is your problem, they said. Honor it or not. Thanks very much. I now begin my new life with a present. I begin my new life with a transitional present from my colleague Anita Patterson and her husband Orlando Patterson.
Thank you so much for coming. We have a reception over there, so please get some books, get them signed. We're going to play one more movie that is our newest in the Favorite Poem Project collection, featuring BU's new president, Dr. Melissa Gilliam. Feel free to walk around and eat and drink while you watch it.